Choi Youngwon glanced at the woman with confusion. He felt this room was too dark. He's confused why she was in the darkness like a criminal. The woman was speechless after hearing Choi Youngwon's question. That woman began to turn on the lights in the laboratory. Choi Youngwon, who is still confused, starts asking questions to her, who is Y. The black-haired woman next to him said that Y was a person who killed today who was a teleportation user. Choi Youngwon began to smile, saying himself quickly forgot about useless things. Besides that, Choi Youngwon felt unsuitable to be his collection because of his unstable abilities. The bespectacled woman closed her mouth like hiding her laughter. The woman began to ask about the wound on her cheeks that her believed was not a punch from Y. When he was about to say who had hit him, Choi Youngwon, who saw the notification on his cell phone, starting to throw his cell phones into the water. The notification came from the call of someone who was his chairman. While sagging wound plaster on his cheek, Choi Youngwon began to say who had hit him. He said that this was the work of an interesting liar. While removing the wound plaster on his face, Choi Youngwon said him could find out that someone was lying to him. Although Choi Youngwon was annoyed with Yerim, but him had a better idea than killing him. While spreading his hands, he said that he wanted to test him. With a smile, a bespectacled woman was curious whether him would send him a gift. Choi Youngwon, who heard it, began to glance at the woman and said to give him a useful gift. Moving to the hospital, Hyun, who was visiting Yerim, began to yawn due to fatigue. Yerim, who saw Hyun, was exhausted, asking him to rest, but Hyun was still worried about Yerim. Yerim told Hyun not to worry because he had been given escort. Yerim also felt Hyun must be surprised by the incident just now and wanted to rest now. Hyun, who started laughing lightly, felt that what Yerim said had a point. Before Hyun was about to rest, Yerim began to ask him one thing. With nervousness, Yerim asks if about Choi Youngwon, who is close to him. Yerim thinks to look naturally as much as possible. He is actually sure that what Choi Youngwon said was bullshit, which was clearly unreasonable. And from the one seeing, they both are not so close. With nervousness, Yerim said that he was curious because Choi Youngwon told him that him would show magic to Hyun, saying that Yerim hoped that they were just an acquaintance. Hyun, who was confused by Yerim's magic, began to start seeing his cell phones and seeing if there was a notification from Choi Youngwon. She saw a notification from Choi Youngwon, said that herself did not know because his notification was turned off. While showing his cell phone to Yerim, Hyun said that if there were many messages coming in, Yerim, who saw him, was surprised because many messages from Choi Youngwon were not read and ignored. By holding back his anger, Yerim called Choi Youngwon as a bastard stalker. Hyun, who saw the message on his cell phone, was surprised by Choi Youngwon, who sent a lot of messages to him. When Yerim intended to kill Choi Youngwon, who said crazy, Hyun began to whisper something to Yerim by saying this was information that was unknown to the public. Hyun began whispering about a few years ago when his grandfather had a blowout fight with the president of the Choi family. After the quarrel, the relationship between the Seoju family and the Choi family was cut off. She said that herself began to be close to Choi Youngwon when he was around 6 years old. Yerim, who heard that, began to know that Choi Youngwon relationship with Hyun was not as close as he thought. After saying that, Hyun started walking away while telling Yerim to make sure the lights after her left. Hyun also said goodnight to Yerim. When he just closed the door to Yerim's eyes to be lethargic. She thought about Yerim, when her thought that someone began to call him. While clenching his fists, her feels guilty because Yerim hurts again. When he was thinking that, someone began to ask if her was fine. Hyun said fine, and asked him to keep her Yerim, who her call Opa well. While walking away from Yerim's patient's room, Hyun thought herself could not let this continue. In a place that sells drinks that are closed, Hyun was seen entering the place while inserting his hand in his pocket. When he started walking in, it was seen that the Hyun family, who was a family of Seoju or Hanyang, was sitting and preparing for discussion. Hyun father, who is the head of the family, now said her if her came on time. With the gripping atmosphere, Hyun's father said that his would start a family emergency meeting. With a sharp look, Hyun thought of protecting whatever Yerim happened. Moving to the place of Yerim is with a burning television. Yerim, who calling Jay, said not to apologize. Jay, who felt guilty, told the executor that his was injured because of himself. Yerim did not mind him and told him to focus on his additional tasks. Moving to the highway, with a truck driving there, who in plat written bill an escort. Someone who is a subordinate of the Hanyang family is seen relaxing while starting to hum. When him was doing that, him was surprised by something in front of him and began to brake his truck. In front of him was seen Jay, who was silent, blocking him. The person was surprised because the one in front of him is now one of the executors. Jay began to attack him with his iron tail. The person began to scream not when himself will be attacked by Jay. A few moments after him attacked the man, Jay began to open the truck storage car. Inside there is Y that makes Jay feel relieved. Jay told Y that himself would bury him if him did not wake up because he already knew the original face of the executor. Jay said that to make sure Y was really dead, but even though him died, the association would try to gather information even from the corpse. Y, who heard the threat from Jay, began to wake up from his stupor. The executor who heard the information was surprised because it turned out that Y was not dead. When Jay asked what to do to him, Yerim began to smile cunningly. In a place with lots of toys in it, there are K that are on his back without saying anything on the sofa. With anxious feeling, his wondered when the executor and members left Hanyang would go home. The most terrible criminal organization, the executor gang. In the morning, they disguised themselves as cleaning companies. But at night, they cleaned the rotten politicians, hypocritical heroes and community trash. As the most terrible criminal organization, the story of an angled view of K, which is one of the executives there. And now his is in his mission disguised as a pet Hanyang family. K, who was called and sought by Haihun, who called him the third Alexander, was hiding in a bush, so he was not invited to travel. Restlessly K began to turn towards Haihun. With himself that is threatened, not calm, K is confused with the reason that this happens. Returning a few moments ago, when K was sleeping on the sofa, he heard a noise from behind the door which made him wake up immediately. When him runs happily, thinking that the executor. Him happily began to hold he and mother's clothes, thinking about the executor. When him turned to the side, his began to be confused by the existence of the executor that was not there. He and mother began to stroke K's head, saying that him would have missed Yerim so much. She said Yerim was currently being treated at the hospital and asked K to be patient by calling him Fluffy, who made K shocked. While in Yerim's room, K began to scream but still whispered. Him upset, wondering the reason why the executor was in the hospital. Him angrily shouted at another executive, and asked what other executives were doing without adequate assistance. With annoyance, Q said that K was too noisy. She was also angry because K, who instead made a fuss and did not answer emergency calls. K, who got the question, began to hesitate to answer. He said that himself was mingling in disguise, which was having fun. He also said that because of that him was too busy until him did not have time to check the phone. With nervousness, him also told them that the sole of the dog's feet could not press the telephone button well. Q and J felt that what was said was true. So that the misunderstanding does not continue, J starts to explain what really happened. J said to hide his identity, the executor deliberately injured himself. Although like that, J still feels annoyed. Q, who hears it, is also upset. Jay was annoyed because all this happened because the family of Kim Hanyang, who had called the trash. With a smile behind his bare head, Jay proposed to finish off the Kim family little by little before his wedding day. Q, who heard the ideas from Jay, began to smile. With a flat face, K did not approve the proposal, saying that they had to ask permission from the executor who had called Hung for that. At that time K permit to leave. He said that himself just remembered something and had to leave immediately. When Q shouted, starting to ask the reason, K began to turn off his laptop. While closing his laptop, K thinks of acting like a real dog during his disguise. With a feeling of sadness because his Hung was treated, K began to jump, and while changing, he thought to immediately go to the hospital and visit the executor. When he started down the stairs, K was surprised when he saw Kim Yihun looking down. He was surprised by Kim Yihun, who sat in the living room. He feels confused about Kim Yihun because instead of patrol, his is at home. With an idea, K began to plan something that made Kim Yihun glanced him. With a hopeful look, K bites the rope like asking him for a walk. Kim Yihun, who saw it, began to be touched by the cuteness of K. With full of hope, K intends to pretend to take Kim Yihun for a walk. When appointed by Kim Yihun, K intends to decide on the rope and run away when it is outside. While hugging K and calling him General, Kim Yihun was touched because him thought that K came to cheer him up. Angry K began to bark and think that Kim Yi-hoon suddenly went crazy. Hye-hun began to take K from Kim Yi-hoon's hand and said that it wasn't that the dog thought. By calling K as the third Alexander, Hye-hun told Kim Yi-hoon that him seemed to come to ask for a walk. Kim Yi-hoon, who heard it, looked disappointed with it. When Kim Yi-hoon slumped back, Kim Hye-hun began to lower K to the floor. With a feeling of joy, thinking that with this him can meet the executor. Kim Hye-hun smiled and said this would not work. He said that K was too cute, and after the events that befell Yerim, Kim Hye-hun considers that strong protection is needed for K. Him also thinks to give a suitable armor to give to a dog that makes K who hear it starts to sweat cold. When the choice has been determined, Kim Hye-hun will put it on K, which makes K restless. Moving to Yerim, who was in the hospital, Hien began to ask Yerim's problem that made Yerim surprised. Yerim, who was fed by Hien, said that himself was okay. While starting to daydream, Yerim still thinks positively and considers his feeling wrong. Hien, who saw Yerim daydreaming, asked him about what he was looking at. Outside the residence of the Kim family, the residents who were there began to be crowded because of the existence of Kim Hye-hun as a helmet man. When they saw K, they thought that him was his pet dog and began to call it cute. But what makes them confused is when the dog has a bag with a B shape on his back. Kim Hye-hun, who saw that Alexander's third or K had an ordinary expression, Kim Hye-hun asked him if him didn't like his bag. Kim Hye-hun explained that this bag was designed with the perfect bioengineering to provide a 200% comfort even for a dog. K does not care about it and assume that this is an insult for an executor. Smiling, K intends to run away immediately when there is a chance. On the other hand, someone who followed them said that the hero's pet dogs were cute, more precisely cute to be torn apart by her. From the silhouette began to appear that her was a woman with curly hair. The reason her hated the Kim Hanyong family was because in the past, Hien's father, who looked young, gave an attack on her. More precisely in slime, which is her pet. With a feeling full of sadness, her calling the creature by the name Nyong Nyong. While remembering when the family of Kim Hanyong destroyed her slime, she was angry because they had destroyed her beloved. While squeezing plastic bottles, her will never forget what Kim Hanyong's family has done. While starting to take salvation pill, her thought that herself couldn't beat them all. While thinking to defeat the dog, her began to see the salvation pill in her hand. A few moments after that, one of the students was seen laughing cheerfully while being followed by his friend behind him. At that moment, a grandmother who was not far from there slipped from the stairs. When slipping, the stick that her holding began to fall, and with such circumstances, made the grandmother surprised. When her thought to catch up with her husband, the female student around there shouted for help. When the grandmother was resigned to her life, Helmet Man or Kim Hye-hun came to save her. While looking at her, Kim Hye-hun questioned the grandmother if her was fine. K, who feels this is an opportunity, start running away from Kim Hye-hun. Kim Hye-hun, who saw it, began to pull the rope concerned in his bag that made K surprised. When the grandmother reminded her husband, who was similar to Hye-hun at a young time, Kim Hye-hun told K that his was wrong way, which made his first blurred plan fail. In the course of a love balloon in the form of love with a pink colors seen hanging on the street lights. When Kim Hye-hun began to glance down, he saw a little girl was crying. When Kim Hye-hun was using the mechanical hand of love, K, who saw, feel there was a chance, started running away from Kim Hye-hun. But easily, Kim Hye-hun could catch K easily. After catch K, Kim Hye-hun returned the balloon to the little girl who made her said Helmet Man's the best. With this, the second attempt K to run away failed. A few moments after that, Kim Hye-hun managed to solve the problems of the residents around. The K rope that continued to be held made him unable to escape, and the third runaway attempt failed. While being dragged by Kim Hye-hun, K began to sigh because himself failed to escape again. One of the residents helped by Kim Hye-hun was surprised and amazed because he managed to repair his car, which was badly damaged by an incident. The man thanked Helmet Man, while Kim Hye-hun began to lift one of his hands and invited K, who him called Alexander III, to continue his journey. At that time, K was confused by what Kim Hye-hun had done. While traveling, many people who were assisted by Hye-hun thanked him, and said that the dog was very cute. K, who witnessed all of that, he did not think that the work of the patrol duty hero was to do something like this. When Kim Hye-hun looked around to check people who needed help, K began to see him annoyed. With his kindness, K did not change his views and remained revenge with the heroes who chose people to be saved, and did not care about him as a child when he needed help.
When K was a child, he saw a hero and asked for help. But the hero turned his head as if he didn't see and hear anything. That made K, who was still hurt with the behavior of the heroes. And since then K considers the heroes to be nothing more than hypocritical people. When he heard someone shouted and feel afraid, Kim Hae-hun and K began to turn to the sound from the sound. When they were running from slime-shaped monsters, one of them called the monster a terrible monster. While laughing, she told her children to dance. K, who saw this incident, was silent for a moment, before finally starting to run, thinking that this was a perfect escape opportunity. But when only a few steps, K began to crash into a barrier that surprised him. Monster in summoned by her was also locked up by Kim Hae-hun's barrier. While using barrier, Kim Hae-hun told everyone to run away immediately. Knowing that no one needs more help, Kim Hae-hun began to use his technology to attack her. She, who saw it, began to grin when Kim Hae-hun took out his technology. Without Hae-hun knowing, her has hidden the monster that will attack Kim Hae-hun. When it was going to attack him, a loud voice began to be heard from behind Kim Hae-hun, which surprised him. The person who saved him was Kim Ye-hoon, who was now blowing his smock in his finger. Smiling, Kim Ye-hoon said that him here to help patrol. Kim Hae-hun, who saw Kim Ye-hoon, shocked and starting to call him Uncle Ihan. Surrounded by the woman's pet, Kim Hae-hun asked Kim Ye-hoon if his was fine, remembering that him was very depressed before. Kim Hae-hun, who heard that, was quite relieved. At that moment Kim Ye-hoon began to say something. He said that now himself thought of going to practice for a while. Kim Hae-hun began to get annoyed and told Kim Ye-hoon to stop joking and immediately defeated these monster. Without them knowing, K, who was right in front of the monster, began to fall asleep. After defeating the monsters, Kim Ye-hoon thought that one problem was resolved. Kim Ye-hoon told Kim Hae-hun that him wasn't joking before and him was serious. When Kim Ye-hoon said that, Kim Hae-hun remembered something wrong and said to wait a moment. He asked where Alexander went, which made Kim Ye-hoon start to surprise. While running and carrying a barrier ball filled with K, the woman began to laugh with satisfaction. She said that her already knew the effect of Kim Hae-hun's barrier. With a barrier that began to disappear, she said that the barrier only had an effect at a certain distance. No, the barrier has disappeared. K began to attack her loudly. While looking at K leaving, her shouted not because he failed to catch the hero's pet. While jumping happily, K thinks of finding a quiet place so he can transform to his human form. And immediately went to the executor, who is called Hung. When thinking about it, K began to crash into something soft. K is confused with something soft that has been hit by him. A little girl was surprised when a puppy ran into his hands. K, who was in this situation, began to be confused. While hugging him, the girl said that K was very cute. K, who was in this difficult situation, started think him was on the wrong path. On the other hand, when Kim Ye-hoon was confused and thought to find it, Kim Hae-hun looked relaxed while starting to press the button on his watch. At that moment the voice of someone who asked for help to tell the way to a place. When he saw him, Kim Hae-hun looked shocked by what him saw now. The person who asked for help was the top 3 heroes of the night. He questioned if they wanted to help. 8 years ago, when there was a rebellion, Hero the Knight told the world that himself was not a hero or villain because himself was a person who would fight the crime in accordance with his own pride. With those words, he alone defeated 27 villain groups as independent civilian. And now he's carrying on the Jaeon family legacy as one of the top 3 heroes. The knight is right in front of Kim Ye-hoon and Kim Hae-hun. While taking a purple liquid, the knight guessed that they had a fun time. Upset, Kim Ye-hoon told the knight that him don't believe this neighborhood's under him watch. While saying that, Kim Ye-hoon thought that being a top 3 heroes had a heavy responsibility. While holding the handle of his sword, the knight said that him had a point. Kim Ye-hoon thought that this nature guy was very dangerous. With confidence the knight said him was lost. Kim Ye-hoon and Kim Hae-hun, who heard that, could only be confused. While pointing at them, the knight asks if there is a playground around here. While holding his head, Kim Hae-hun did not expect that him was more idiot than when a rebellion occurred. Kim Hae-hun also told him to forget that. Him angry said that they wanted to find Alexander, who made the knight who heard it surprised by the words of Kim Hae-hun. On the other hand, a girl began to hug K while calling her puppy, which made K feel depressed. While still holding K, the girl began to take her cell phone and put it on a tripod with a mic above it. While holding a tripod, the girl said if you need help, herself will immediately run there. While hugging K, which made him uncomfortable, in his live, she introduced herself as the next generation hero Eula. She said that herself meets the missing puppy today. She asks if him is cute. At that time K, who tried to escape, thought to let himself go. With all the energy, K thinks of having to go to Hung immediately. The girl who saw K running away began to be confused. When K successfully escaped, the girl was surprised when he saw that. The girl was surprised, because now it is right below K. There was a broken glass that he cleaned before, which made K, who saw it, very surprised and panicked while starting to call the girl as little brat. After a loud voice, K began to open to see him and saw the girl right in front of him. With a face that looked bruised, the girl looked happy while saying that her got it. While seen lifting K, the girl was grateful that K was fine. When he saw the girl's cell phone broken, he was confused by it. When he saw the broken glass around the girl, K wondered the reason she saved him. Right at that moment, the sound of footsteps with purple liquid in his shoes said that her found it. The woman said the little girl who made the girl surprised. With the breath that began to run out, the woman said that her felt that her pet was holding now. K, who jerked, began to think. He was confused with the woman who suddenly could be here. K thinks to get out of here immediately and turn back into a human. While spreading his hand, her told him to immediately take him here. Without fear, the girl said no, what made K and the woman surprised. While pointing and shouting, the girl said that K was not a pet, but her animal friend. She also said that herself would not give her dogs holding someone who did not know the difference. With anger, the woman began to bite her teeth. While saying that the child in this era, she began to remove bubbles from his hand. The bubble began to enlarge, which made the girl surprised. While holding out his hand, the woman continued the conversation by saying she did not have courtesy. The bubble monster began to hiss and advance closer to the girl. While holding K, the girl said this was fine. That surprised K. When the girl said that herself would protect him, making K remember his past when he was saved by someone. The person who saved him was the executor who hugged him to calm him down. When the monster began to open his mouth to eat it, the girl could only surrender and shed tears while tightly hugging K. When K began to look and say slowly to change, the engine that I carried began to sound threat-detected. Mini Gatling gun began to get out of K bag, which made K confused. Because of that, the monster called the woman began to stop and confused. Even the monster owner was also confused by what her saw. Mini Gatling gun began to spin and shine like he was preparing to shoot. On the other hand, Kim Hae-hun, who was running, finally found his way. Because of the shooting of the weapon, the deadly attack began to be fired at the monster, which made the monster bounce quickly. Shouting and asking what happened, the woman began to be hit by her own monster that began to explode. At that moment, Kim Hae-hun was surprised when he saw a big explosion on the wall close there. When Kim Ye-hun was amazed, Kim Hae-hun was confused by what had happened. Confused when he saw the effect of his splash, Kim Hae-hun said it seemed like his creation had been successful. A few moments after the incident, a noise came from the crowd who came there. While photographed by many people, the girl said that the puppies that she adopted had saved her life. K's puppy could not say anything. He wondered about what Kim Hae-hun had given him. His tool named Puppy Protection with a detected threats system, equipped energy cannon with 4-star ability and 5-star cuteness by Hae-hyun Kim. With enthusiasm, the girl said that herself would maintain it. That made K surprised about it. While starting to step toward the girl with a bad feeling, Kim Ye-hun said that the dog that is now holding is their property. Hae-hun began to nod it in agreement. K seemed to be exhausted with all this, while the girl seemed not to care about it. She began to turn his face to say that herself would call him Maximus III, who made Kim Ye-hun start jolting and shouted to call him a little girl. Moving to a hospital called Univ Soup Hospital, Yerim was seen asking what him was saying while thinking of calling it old geezer. Yerim, who was with Hyun, was dealing with the head of Kim Hanyeong's family before. At that time, Yerim thought that his had lost his mind. While opening a black box, grandfather Hyun asked if him thought about a weapon of training to defend himself. Yerim, who saw the weapon, was surprised.